I messed up. The GTO's brakes were in dire need of a restoration. So that's what I tried to do, but in doing so, I think I made them worse. So the GTO's front brake calipers are aluminium, but they use steel bolts. So for those of you who don't know, if you put a steel bolt in an aluminium housing, the aluminium reacts with the steel and it goes up and basically becomes a thread lock. So then when you try and take the bolts out, you do what I did. And you end up snapping the steel bolt, meaning half the threads are still inside the aluminium housing. And then at that point, it only really leaves you with one option, and that's to drill it out. And that's what I tried to do, but the drill bit went in wonky, my fault, and because the calipers are aluminium, it's so soft, I ended up ovaling out the hole, so I can't put a thread in it anymore, and I don't want to just whack a nut on it. So this caliper was essentially a write-off, without sending it to a machine shop to be fixed. So I decided to do what anyone else would do, and I was looking around online for another caliper to see how much it would cost to replace my mistake, and it wasn't cheap. So I decided to take to eBay to see how expensive a front brake caliper would be, and I was quite surprised because they seemed to be holding the value quite well. But then I got lucky because I came across this. And that was these. I managed to get hold of 4 brand new second-hand, new to me calipers, which are in a much better state than mine were. So today, we're going to dig those calipers out the box, sand them down, take the pistons out, the seals out, the whole lot. Repaint them, recondition them, reseal them, new pistons, and hopefully they should work as they were brand new from the factory. And to help us do this, we've got some brand new parts which this GTO definitely needs. So look at these. We've got some brand new brake clips for the brake lines. We've got some stickers, so when we paint them, we can put the Mitsubishi stickers back on the caliper hangers. Got some fresh seals, fresh clips. That's the front calipers, the rear calipers. We've got new bleed nipples, so we can actually bleed the brakes once they're built. Brand new rear pistons, brand new front pistons. Got some lovely braided brake lines to go on the fronts and the rears, because my brake lines are pretty much non-existent. And we've also got a brake shoe spring kit with the adjustable tensioner, I think it is. And some brand new brake shoes for the back, because again, the brake shoes on the GTO are basically non-existent because they've delaminated, so all the shoe material has come off the metal on the inside, and it makes sense to change it while I'm here. But as always, the only thing left to do now is get straight into it. So we'll dig these calipers out the box, get them on the bench and start stripping them down. So we'll start with the fronts because they gave me the most hassle last time. The first thing we'll do is we'll drown the bolts in some WD-40, some penetrating oil. Same with the pins on the top, just to get everything out and hopefully stop them from snapping on me again. So I've bought an industrial size can of WD-40 for this because I know I'm going to need a lot of it because I don't want to snap any of the bolts again. Now I'm going to take off the bleed nipple cover just so I can drown the bleed nipple in WD-40 as well. It doesn't look too bad, but just in case. That actually isn't that bad. It's alright. But that's a safety, sorry. Now I'm going to get the other calipers and do the exact same thing. So I've now drowned both the calipers in WD-40 to try and loosen up those bolts. I've also done the rears because these bolts need to come out on both, and I also need to get the bleed nipple out there and there, so I thought the best thing to do is to cover them in penetrating oil as well as the fronts. Now the only thing left to do really is wait for the penetrating oil to work its magic and we can try and get the bolts out. So the first thing we'll do to begin stripping these calipers down is we'll take the brake pads out, the retaining spring, the spring on the back and the 2 pins that go through the middle. The first thing you need to do is to get these off. Just pull that out there, and there's the same on the front. Then this spring will come forwards. You can see there's a little hook on the bottom. So that hooks in like that and then they go in, so we'll get that off. Then we need to get these pins out this way. If you look on the opposite side of the caliper, you'll see there's slots in those pins. They're not threaded, but if you give that a spin, and that a spin with a flathead screwdriver, it'll break up any corrosion built up on the pin in between these housings here. It should free it up so you can knock it through that way and take the pins out, remove the spring and remove the brake pads. So we'll give them a spin. That one nice and free. That one a bit tight. So again, free it up. Now nice and free. Spin it round. And on the back here, get a hammer. Give them a bit of a tap. Just to knock the pins through. And then get yourself a punch. Pins will then come out. So we'll have a spring and the calipers. So now the pads are out, we'll get the bleeding nipple off, and then we need to break these 4 bolts loose to take them off to split the caliper, because this is actually in 2 parts. I don't know if you can see the seam there. And then there's 2 little O-ring seals in here which join the 2 calipers together. So you'll take these bolts out, take that out, split them. That's the caliper stripped, and then we can get the pistons out on the inside, and they're looking pretty rusty, so I'm glad I got new ones. So that's a 10mm. So now we've got the caliper in place, it's nice and tight. We need to get these 4 bolts out, and I'm pretty sure they are 14s. These are a bit rusty, so I'll give the spanner a tap. That's a 14mm over, now we'll just give it a good pull. And they're in there pretty tight. There's 1. And 4. Now they're all pretty free and ready to come out. So one thing I'm going to do now, I've broke them bolts free, is I'm going to back them out as best I can until I feel resistance. So when I feel resistance, I go to the opposite side of the caliper where the threads are, put more penetrating oil in the threaded holes so then it can work its way in deeper, try and free the threads up and stop me from snapping the bolts again. You can see just there, that gap is where the caliper splits, and there's 2 seals in there. If you want to reseal the caliper, that's fine, don't worry about them too much. If you're not going to reseal it, 1, I'd recommend you do, but 2, make sure you keep an eye on those seals, because if they fall out and you forget to put them back in, you'll have brake fluid leak out of here once you rebuild them. So we'll get these bolts out completely and split the caliper down. So that's all 4 bolts completely loosened on one caliper. It's ready to be split in half, and we can keep going with the strip down. We haven't snapped any bolts, so I'm already happy. So 1 bolt, 2 bolts, 3 bolts, and 4 bolts. There goes the other half. So there's one half of the caliper, there's the other half. As you can see, them pistons are in dire need of a replacement, so I'm glad I got new pistons. So we need to get the dust seals off, them pistons out, and then the seal on the inside out, as well as the circlip that holds these in. And those of you who've got a good eye will have noticed that that piston is actually bigger than that piston. So although they are a 4-pot system, 2 are bigger than the front 2, so we need to make sure we put the right pistons back in the correct place, because if you put the small piston in the big hole, it won't seal and you just won't get the big piston in the little one. So let's fight with these and try and get them out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pick tool to remove the dust seal from around the pistons, because they're held on with a circlip. So you just pry the circlip up and pull the seal off, and you can already see how much corrosion is under this dust seal, so it definitely needed resealing. And now we've got to try and figure out how to get these rusty pistons out, because I know for a fact it's not going to be easy. So as you've just saw, those pistons are in there pretty tight, and the rust probably doesn't help, but I've got an idea on how I can try and get them out without an airline, because I don't have one. If it works, fantastic. If it doesn't, we'll have to try something else. I'm not really bothered about the condition of those pistons, because I've got brand new ones to go in. I just don't want to damage the inside of the caliper, because that's where the piston seals to, and if I damage that, it mightn't seal. It kind of writes the caliper off and I'm back to square one again. So let's try my first method. So the first thing I want to try is an internal slide hammer, and what that does is, as you put this in and twist that, the fingers on the end, they splay open, which means if I get it in there like so, tighten that and splay these fingers, I might be able to get that to bite the piston enough so I can pull it out that way. If not, we'll have to figure something else out. And that's kind of worked the dream. So now I'll do it on the front one, and then I'll do it on the other one. Where is it now? Do the same on here, get them out, and I'll come back to you. So now that's all 8 pistons and seals out of both the front calipers. And they came out so much easier than they did last time because I used that slide hammer. And the only reason I thought to use the slide hammer is because I've done this job once before, I just messed it up near the end. But at least it's helped me this time, because that took me all of about 20 minutes. So now we just need to do the same to the rears, and after that we can get them sanded down, wire brushed, and ready for paint. Pretty glad I'm doing this, because all them pistons are disgusting. Look at the sludge build up on the backs of the rear pistons. That was inside the caliper. So yeah, definitely needed doing. The seals aren't great either. They probably still would have sealed to a point, But let's get the fresh ones in once it's painted. So now that's all the calipers stripped, I'll clip back to you when the wire brushed and cleaned. Now all the calipers are ground down and ready to be painted. I think it's safe to say it's not the cleanest of jobs. But I'll wipe down the calipers and my face and we'll get them hung up and ready to spray. Right guys, so it's now 2 days later, the paint's fully cured and they're on the bench, so I'll show you them now. And I think they came out lovely. I put the stickers on the rear calipers, the black Mitsubishi stickers. And I've also painted the fronts. So I sanded off the yellow on top of the letters and painted them black, just like I did on the rocket cover. So now we'll get the new seals and the new pistons in and we'll fully rebuild these calipers. So hopefully they actually work when we put them back on the car. So like you saw in the intro, we've got 4 new pistons for both fronts. So 4 for them. We've then got brand new bleed nipples, new seals with retaining clips, again front and rears. Got new rear pistons. So the only thing left to do is get them straight in. So now it's down to the fronts, and it's similar to the rears in the sense of there's a seal on the inside that sits in a little recess. There's a dust seal that goes over, but the dust seal actually clips on the outside, not the inside. And on these front calipers, there's also 2 different piston sizes. That piston is bigger than that one. I don't know if you can tell because it's only a minute difference, but there is a difference, so we need to make sure we get that right. And here's the new pistons. And they're miles better than the ones we took out. I'll try and show you on the camera. I think the bigger ones are these with dots in them. So you see on the back of the piston there's 3 dots, and then on that one there's none. So I think, yeah, looking at them you can see a bit of a difference. So they're the bigger ones, they're the smaller ones. So again, we've got some rubber grease. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 seals, 2, 3, 4. So 4 dust seals as well, 2 for each side of the caliper. And then we've also got the retaining clips which go on the outsides of the dust seals, just around the edge there, to snap the seal to the caliper so it doesn't come off as the piston comes out. But like the pistons, these are 2 different sizes, so we need to decipher what's what. So I think that's a bigger one, and that's your smaller one. The differences there is the bigger ones seem to have little notches on the edge, little dimples or dots, and the smaller ones are quite smooth. So going forward, we can use that to differentiate the 2. Then there's also these 2 little seals. These seals sit there and there. So when you build the caliper back up, it seals the bridge between the 2. So you don't have brake fluid leaking out the sides here, so you need to make sure they go in. And they go in properly when you bolt the caliper back together, but we'll move on to that later on. So they're the 2 smaller seals, they're the 2 bigger seals, and just like the rear calipers, we'll get the seals on the inside first, get the pistons in, get the dust seals over and the clips on. So I'll time lapse this bit because you know what I'm doing. So the first thing I'll do is put some rubber grease around the housing for the pistons as well as the seals, so the rubbers are actually lubricated so the pistons don't snag the rubber on the way in and rip it. Next I'll lubricate the pistons and we'll get them in, they just slide straight in, and then we'll get the dust seals over, so the dust seals bite to the top of the piston because there's a little ridge, and then you need to press them over the outer rings like I said, stick the C-clip snap rings on, and that will hold the seal in place. And that is literally it for rebuilding the calipers in terms of the pistons and the new seals. So that's one half of the front calipers done. I think it came out alright considering I've never done it before. Pistons move freely and the seals are on. Those C-clips are in there. This one feels a little bit loose, but it's down tight at the minute. I'll just have to keep an eye on it and see how it goes. But it's not too bad. So I'll crack on with the other 3 halves and I'll come back to you when we're putting them together. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the seals in there and there. Just give it a wipe down just to make sure it is clean. And then I'm going to put a little bit of rubber grease just on the edge. So the seal will stay in place. You don't want that falling off and then getting crushed between the sides. I'm just going to wipe off the excess. Get the new seals in. There's 1 the other. Now I'm going to put some copper grease on the threads, only a little bit, just to guide the bolts in and stop them from sticking if I ever need to strip these down again. I'll pick this up, the bolts will fall through. And now I'll guide them in to where they go to on the other half. Slowly seat the two and then start threading these down by hand just to make sure they don't get tight. So I can start putting them in with the ratchet, seat them home but not tight until they're all down, and then I'll torque them all up. So now I don't have any torque specs for these 4 bolts, but I know the rear caliper bolts are 44 Newton meters and they're the same size bolt. That's the only thing I can go off really in terms of how tight I can get it, but it's better than nothing. At least I'll have a value to go from. But with them being M10, it's kind of what you'd expect anyway. There it is. It's all 4 calipers fully built up, so we can now finally get them onto the car. And it'll be the first time the GTOs have brakes in 2 years. I've also got some brake shoes for the rears because the handbrake is a brake shoe inside the disc, so we can actually start using the handbrake instead of a piece of wood. So let's get the GTO up and get the brakes back on. So the wheel's off, and one thing I want to say is I'm going to have to put these on with the old discs for now. But I'm going to get a full disc and pad set up all around on the GTO. I'm not going to leave the old discs on there, so don't worry about that. They're just expensive. So we'll fit the driver's side first. Get this over the disc, like so. One bolt in the back at the top. While we're down here, we'll get the new braided brake lines that are bought for this caliper along with all the others. So I've got the line from the caliper to the midsection, and the line from the midsection to the chassis. 2 sets of braided brake lines for each corner. So might as well fit them over here, just so you can see them a bit better. They're the new braided lines, and I think they look fantastic, especially against the yellow. So we'll thread them in the top. That's that in. So I was going to fit all of the front brake line system all the way through to the chassis, but these are the old ones and I need to refurb the brackets on them. I'm not using the hoses, and I'm going to make new hard lines as well, but I need the brackets. But as you can see, they're all rusted and crap basically. So I need to strip these down, wire brush them all, prime them, paint them, let them dry, and then I can fully fit the brake system, but at the minute I can't. So we'll leave that as it is for now. We'll move on to the other side, do the rears, and at a later date I'll fit these. It's not much, it's just a clip on the top, a clip there, 2 brake line nuts, and that's it really. Then that bolts to the suspension, which I'm going to change eventually because that's all rusted and the car sits like a rally car. But for now, leave them off, we'll do everything else. They are looking a lot better though. So what I've done for now is I've got the other line on the top to where it comes down from the hard line on the chassis, but now they just sit like that because I need to redo that bracket like I've just said. So get the wheel back on, but I think the caliper goes nice with the colour of the car. Well, I haven't got the wheel back on. As I went to put the wheel back on, I noticed one of the bolts was just spinning, and I realised the stud has completely come up the hub, which is fantastic. So I've just had to take the hub off, leave the wheel on the floor, take the caliper off again, and I'm going to have to buy new studs, and I'm going to do both hubs because if it's happened on one side, chances are it could happen on the other. I don't know why that's happened or how it's happened, but it's happened, so we need to fix it. But looking at the stud, there's absolutely nothing there to bite to the hub, so no wonder it's spun. I think it is 30 years old to give it its due. So we'll have to leave that mess as it is there, move on to the back, get the back one on, and then go on to the passenger side and take that hub off as well, so I can replace the studs on that side, because like I've just said, if it's failed here, they're probably going to fail over there. I'll check the rears before I put the calipers on, because if I get the caliper on, I'll have to take it off to take the hubs off. So yeah, this is going fantastically. So I've just got the wheel off the other side, and the studs seem okay, but the whole wheel bearing has failed. I haven't got a clue how, because the car's been sat here, well, for a few months. It hasn't moved, but for some reason the wheel bearings failed. I have no idea how this has happened. Well, either way it needs to come off, so it's that bolt, that bolt, that bolt and that bolt. There's 4 17mm nuts. Take them off, the whole hub slides out. I think at this rate I might just try and find new hubs, because I'll probably get the studs with them, and if that's failed... So after looking at the hub, I think I know what's happened. So the hub sits like that in the car, and obviously there's the movement. You can see just on the end there, as you move it in and out, it slides. So when the hub's in the car, the drive shaft goes through the hub, and there's a big nut on the end there that pinches it all together, and it basically clamps the hub together. I think because I've had this, because I've had the car on the floor on its wheels without the drive shaft in, there's not really anything clamping that together other than the pressure of the bearings that are in there. So I think what's happened is, as I've been turning the car and stuff to wheel it around, move it about, that's just eventually loosened itself off because there's nothing squeezing it together. So I think I could either press that back in, see if it stays tight, but because the bearing feels fine, but I think at this point I might just try and get new hubs. I need new studs anyway, it makes sense. If I can't get hold of them, I'll have to press it, change the studs and see if that works, but that's the only theory I can think of that kind of makes a bit of sense. I am glad I found it now though, because that would have made a horrendous knocking noise and I probably would have lost my wheel further down the road. So, you know, silver lining and all that. Well, let's see how hard these are to get out, because they're pretty toast. Yeah, that was way too easy. Yeah, there was nothing left on them. So I've knocked the studs out of the hubs and I've managed to press the other one back. So I think it was what I said it was. In terms of it being because the drive shafts weren't in to squash it together, it's just opened up slightly. I've pressed it back, there's no play in the bearing, there's no rattle, it sounds okay when it spins. So I think it'll be okay, and that's lucky really, because the price of a new hub for these is quite expensive, and I think it's because they're very hard to come by. So I think my best option now is to just replace these old tired studs, because there's nothing on them. Well, you've got to stay positive, so there's no way we're getting the front calipers on. We've kind of already established that, but there's no reason why we can't get the rears on, hopefully. So we'll get the rears on, we'll get the handbrake shoes set up so the car can actually use the handbrake as opposed to a block of wood. So we'll keep going. So now I've got the rear wheel off and the rear disc. It's not great. I am going to replace them eventually, like I've said, but while we're down here, there's one of the brake line brackets. There's the other brake line bracket with the hard line on the top. So we'll get the brake line from there to there. We'll get that put in. We'll get this disc off. If I can do it with one hand. Hey. And behind this, the studs are okay, the bearing's alright, but the drive shafts are in, so that's probably what's helped with this side here. So let's get the hose in and then we can sort out the brake shoes, the brake caliper, and get this rear wheel back on. And hopefully we don't have any issues where it falls off or the studs strip out. Now that that's on, we can get the brake shoes on. So now we'll get the new spring kit, get it on the hub, and get the shoes on. So I'll be honest with you, the handbrake shoes are on, but it's not a job I could have done and recorded for you. But the yellow springs go on the top there with the spacer behind them. They hook onto the edge in those little holes. And then just down there, if you can see it, that rusty plate is this. This is for the other side. That rectangle spring goes there. And if you're doing your driver's side, it goes in that way. And that little finger will be on that side. So then you go in and press against the edges of the handbrake shoes on the inside, and then on that side it goes against the arm. So there's that rectangle spring. Then on the side you've got your pins with your purple springs and your caps. They were an absolute pain to get on, but you can do it, it just takes a long time. And then below is the tensioner, there, the adjuster, sorry, and then the long brown looking spring just in the red one there, sorry, not brown, and that goes in the back. Apologies for not being able to show you, it's too fiddly of a job to do. I'll include a diagram of where they all go and how it goes together, because that's all I use to do it, and you should be able to figure it out. If you can't, then again, I'm sorry, it's just not an easy job to try and record and do. So now we'll get the brake disc and that should slide over. Studs. So that's over, which is always good. So now we can get the caliper bracket on the back. Now we'll get the caliper on. Over there like so. And then get these bolts in. Bit of copper grease on the bolts. And we should just slide in. That's the caliper bolted up. So there's the caliper. So that's the handbrake in, the caliper on. Now we've just got this hose at the top, which goes into that bracket there. So we'll get that in. Then there's a little hard line that goes between the two. And that is that brake setup done. Other than fresh brake pads and a new disc. So that's the rear driver's side caliper on, as well as the handbrake shoes. So now the handbrake should work. I'm still waiting on pads and discs for the brakes and obviously studs for the front. So that's going to have to be a completely different video, but you'll see what goes on in the future. I won't do it without showing you. I'm going to do the other side without showing you, ironically, because it's exactly the same as the driver's side. So there's not really any point in me recording it, but that's going to be everything for today's video. I know it hasn't exactly gone how I expected it to. I was hoping to have the car on its wheels with all 4 calipers on so I could show you the finished result, but things happen, things get in the way, and that's the beauty of cars. Sometimes you think something's going to happen and then it goes the complete opposite way. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notifications bell so you get an update every time I post, and I'll see you in the next one.
Afraid to turn out the lights.